Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona here with Mike Beer, taking a look at the future race at Monmouth Park on Sunday of this Memorial Day weekend. It is the Miss Liberty Stakes, race 5 on their Sunday program. And speaking of Memorial Day weekend, we do have this promotion going on. You can take advantage of 15% off on everything at shop.drf.com. Just use that coupon code MEMD25 to take advantage of that 15% offer in the Daily Racing Form store. Well, Mike, we've got 8 runners entered for this Miss Liberty at Monmouth, a turf race that's carded going the mile and a 16th distance. And I think this race kind of centers around the number 8 Mission of Joy and what we're going to get from her now as a 5-year-old, because she's got races going back to the early part of last year that would make her pretty tough on this field.
It does feel like she's the horse to beat in here, David. I guess the only flip side to that is she's 5 years old now. We kind of know what she is. We've seen her best race, and maybe one of these other horses, that's not the case for them. And if they can improve here, maybe they can get to her at the end.
It does feel like there are a few up-and-comers in this race, a couple of them going out for the Chad Brown barn, who you always have to respect in these turf races at Monmouth Park. He's got the number 2 Fun with Flags and the number 5 Spaladay in here to see where those horses and Mission of Joy might be placed in the early stages of this race. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this Miss Liberty. And Mike, there are a couple of speed horses in here that seem like they've got to go forward to have their best chances. One of those, clearly the number 4 Precious Avery, who is shown on the front end. The number 7 Joyful Lass has done some of her best running when she's able to get forward position. And I'll be intrigued to see what they do with the number 2 Fun with Flags, who has been somewhat aggressively ridden, at least last time out, and didn't work out. I wonder if they'll change up tactics with her.
Yeah, they certainly could do that, because if you watch some of her races in France, she was pretty versatile over there. They would go forward with her. They also took her back in one of her races, and she ran fine that way. So we'll see what they decide to do with her. Yeah, she was maybe the only one on this pace projector that I might argue with a little bit, but I did think the 4 was fastest early.
Yeah, and even the number 3 Damaso has showed some tactical speed on occasion, though doesn't seem like lately they've been too interested in going to the front with her. Let's go through this field, beginning from the rail out with the number 1, Dreaming of Abba. She got the job done last time, Mike, in a first level allowance race at Tampa. I personally didn't think a whole lot of the field that she was beating that day, but she did come through along the inside, got the split at the top of the stretch, and was able to hold off the late closers at the end. She finished third to today's rival Mohawk Trail, who we'll talk about in just a little bit. Didn't think she got the ideal trip in that spot, but she might be facing a couple of rivals in here that are just a little bit tougher than what she's been meeting recently.
That was my view of her. Anyway, we'll see if she can up her game a little bit, because I think she's going to have to if she's going to beat this field. I can see her getting a good trip from the rail, and she's very admirably consistent, David. I just didn't think her best race at this stage of the game was good enough.
One of the tougher calls in this race has to be the number 2, Fun with Flags, because she's been a big disappointment since coming to the United States, first for her prior trainer that brought her over from France to contest that Belmont Oaks in the summer of last season. Didn't work out that day. She faded to finish last. She was switched into the Chad Brown barn, came off a layoff at Fairgrounds earlier this year. Seemed like it should have been a winnable spot for a horse with her profile. And I thought she got a good trip, Mike, and just had nothing left for the stretch drive. I think the jury's still out on how good she really is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I did like some of her races over in France and thought she had a little bit of potential. She was pretty bad in the Belmont Oaks. That was a really good field. So, I guess if you wanted to be lenient, you could. In a lot of ways, she was even worse last time, David. I mean, they got her up close to the pace. She's tracking a 90-1 shot on the lead in there. She couldn't even get by that horse when they came into the stretch, and then just got swallowed up by everybody. I don't know. I mean, it feels like there's some talent in there, but she better show it in this spot if she wants to win.
The number 3, Damaso, feels like one of the more reliable options in this race. You kind of know what you're going to get from her. Sometimes she lands in spots that are just a little bit too tough. That was the case last time in the Hillsborough, where she was facing the likes of Saffron Mood and Give Me Another. Those horses are grade 1 and grade 2 quality competitors that Damaso just can't really class up against. She was pretty good too back, Mike, where she did not get an ideal trip, was off a little bit slowly, had to adapt to a different kind of running style, got ranked in the middle stages of that race, still was able to get the job done against competition that she was just simply better than. And she's a horse that can make her own kind of trip. She's relatively versatile, can go forward, sit off the pace. Just with Paco Lopez getting aboard, I wonder if she's going to be that much of an interesting price in this spot.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. I mean, I do think, outside of the 2, logical favorites, I guess, who we'll get to in a minute here, maybe she was the most interesting one, David. I'm like you. I liked her race 2 back. I do hope that she settles a little bit better in this race, though, because I don't think she can afford, another trip like that one against this field as they move her up in class. I think she's a little interested in here. I doubt I'll ultimately get to her on top.
The number 4, Precious Avery, is obviously going to influence the pace of this race. She's got a lot of early speed. They sprinted her 5.5 furlongs off the layoff last time, and she was actually quick enough to contest the pace in that spot. Just kind of got run over at the end, but actually put in a pretty good effort that day. She's got that 188 buyer, 3 starts back at Laurel Mike that I suppose makes her somewhat competitive in here. That's a number, though, when you do some digging in Formulator and see some of the runbacks from that race, a lot of horses have not come back to validate that speed figure. So I wonder about it a little bit, and her surrounding form just doesn't quite make her good enough.
Right. I mean, unless you just feel like she's going to be able to get to the lead here, get loose on this field and maybe last until the end. I don't see how you can really make a coherent case for her. If you want to tell me you think she's dangerous on the lead, all right, I guess she is, but I didn't think she was good enough to wire this field.
The number 5, Spaladay, is that other Chad Brown horse in this race. And Mike, she seemed like a pretty progressive sort through her 3-year-old season. She just kept improving her buyer speed figures race after race, leading right on up to that upset victory in the Grade 2 Sands Point at the end of the season. I should say minor upset. She was only 3-1 that day. She came back against some tougher competition in the Hillsborough earlier this year. I'm not going to fault her too much for that spot because I do think Saffron Moon and Give Me Another, the first and second place finishers, are some really tough rivals, Mike. And then last time out in the Bogey, I'll let you talk about it, but certainly not the trip that they could have drawn up on paper.
Yeah, it's very, very strange to see her get that kind of trip in that race last time. And even from the start, it looked like Dylan Davis from the outside post like rode her a little bit, like he wanted her to be forward in that race. I'm not sure why. And then she just pulled him up to contest the pace for a long way. And they're very, very strange tactics last time, and it obviously didn't work out for them. If it was by design, it was by design, David. I suspect that they'll take her back again this time and just let her try to make one run because that's her best running style. She's a really strong finisher when she gets a clean trip, and it feels like, again, we've already talked about some of the horses who could be forward in here. It feels like this race might set up the right way for her.
Yeah, Mike, I'll just add, not only was she in that unfamiliar position closer to the pace than she's ever been, but the horse that she was trying to go after on the far turn, Rakia, blew the turn and drifted out into about the 5 path at the quarter pole, kind of just taking Spaladay out of the race. So I think that's a last performance that you can probably ignore for her. The number 6, Mohawk Trail, we'll take a look at her race 2 back when she beat Dreaming of ABBA, who we already talked about. And Mike, this was a group of Florida breds, so facing competition that was probably a little bit weaker than these, but she puts in a nice late run to get the job. And you can see Dreaming of ABBA is the horse right inside of her who gets caught in traffic a little bit, has to back off right at the 8th pole there, and then switches out, actually finishes off the race pretty decently. Mohawk Trail, she's a nice horse who can work out the right trip when she gets a little pace to close into. Just feels like even her best race might not quite be good enough.
Yeah, that was my problem with her too, David. I mean, I can see this pace setting up the right way for her, but she's not the best closer in the race. And I think we even saw that in the Bogey last time. I mean, obviously we already talked about Spaladay not getting the right trip in there, but this horse got the right trip in there and she was in position to win and she wasn't good enough.
Mike, I'm always frustrated when I'm going back to watch trips and I see a horse have a big trip, maybe 2 or 3 races back, and they come back on their next start and win off that trip at a big price, and it's not a race that was even on my radar. That was the case for Joyful last time at Gulfstream Park. We'll take a look at the stretch run. She was sent off at 25-1 by the bettors in this race, and you go back to take a look at her performance just prior to this, and it's easy to see why she might have had some upside at a big price because she did not get a particularly good trip or ride in that February allowance race where it just seemed like they were intent on getting her out of position every step of the way. Well, they were a little bit more confident to go forward with her in this race, and she was able to stalk outside of an honest pace every step of the way and just prove better than these horses, Mike. I don't think a whole lot of the field she was beating in that spot, but she has a horse that has shown some talent on occasions, and she's relatively lightly raced coming in here.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I mean, she is really lightly raced. And so, when I look at her, I can't say that I love any one of her races that she's run so far, but it does feel like there's potential for better for her anyway. We'll just have to see, I guess. I don't want to, sort of pigeonhole her as a horse who is at her best when she's right up close. Both of her wins have come basically on the lead, and that probably won't work out in here, but there's certainly still the chance that she could pull a different trip and still be effective.
Rounding out the field on the outside is the number 8, Mission of Joy. As I was mentioning earlier, she's got some performances, especially from the first half of 2024, that would make her a legitimate odds-on favorite in this race, particularly her narrow 3rd place finish when she just barely lost the Just a Game last summer at Saratoga. She didn't even run that badly in the Grade 1 Diana in a race that featured no pace whatsoever, and she was trying to make up some ground at the end. Her two efforts at the end of 2024, Mike, before she went to the sidelines, were obviously disappointing. But one of those was at Kentucky Downs. I know I don't have to convince you too much that Kentucky Downs race is worth throwing out. And then she ran in that Dan Smartly at Woodbine, where she arguably moved a little bit sooner in a race that ultimately fell apart at the end. She came back off the layoff last time at Churchill Downs. They obviously wanted to get a confidence booster in her, dropping her into an optional claiming race. And she did what was required to get the job done against an overmatched field. And maybe that's just gotten her back on the right track, because you know that she's got the talent to beat a field like this.
I agreed. I'm a fan of them coming back in, that sort of high priced allowance optional claim or two. Just give her a race where you know she's going to be competitive, and she kind of always looked like she was going to win that race too. I just really like that performance. You already laid it out, David. She's, it's all right there on paper. Her race, her best race is probably too good for these horses unless somebody jumps forward here and can try to match it. And she's just not going to be compromised by the outside post either. She's a very tactical kind of horse, so I can see her getting a good trip in there too. She's the horse to beat.
Let's go to our picks for this Miss Liberty on Sunday at Monmouth Park. And Mike, we've got the same exact, just reversed it here. You're going to go with the number 5 Spaladay on top.
Just didn't really like anybody else in the race, David. It's they're going to be the two favorites in here, but it does feel like Spaladay, could be the better price this time. And I feel like they're going to give her a different trip in here. Sit back, make one run. We'll see if she can jump forward.
Yeah, and I felt like I could make excuses for those two poor efforts for Mission of Joy at the end of last year. And if you can get past those performances, she's just got plenty of races that make her way too tough for this field. So I put her on top. 8-5-3-6 for me, 5-8-3-2 for Mike in race 5 at Monmouth on Sunday, the Miss Liberty. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.